My name is Helen Caldwell. I'm 62 years old, and on March 8th, 2025, I died and met Jesus. It was a massive stroke. 1 second, I was thinking about the morning news. The next, the whole world tilted sideways. For the past 3 years, my life had been quiet. Too quiet. My husband, David, passed away in 2022. He was a lion. He spent 40 years of his life fighting for this country. He was a conservative talk radio host, an author, a speaker. He lived and breathed the movement. And I was right there with him, his partner in everything. I managed his schedule. I proofread his books. I sat in the front row of every event, smiling and waving at the crowds. Our life was a whirlwind of rallies, fundraisers, and strategy calls. We believed we were soldiers in a great war for the soul of America. After he was gone, the house felt empty. The fight felt empty. I'd still watch the news. I'd still get angry at the headlines, but the fire in my own heart was mostly gone. It was just me, the echoes in our big house, and the smell of his old leather armchair that I could never bring myself to get rid of. I was just tired. So incredibly tired. That morning when the stroke hit, it wasn't scary at first. It was just confusing. My right arm went numb, like it was asleep. I tried to grab the counter to steady myself, but my hand wouldn't listen. The coffee mug I was holding slipped from my fingers and shattered on the tile. The sound seemed so far away, like it was happening in another room. Then a strange feeling, a pulling. It wasn't painful. It was just a release. Suddenly, I wasn't on the floor anymore. I was floating near the ceiling, looking down at my own body. I saw myself lying there, my graying hair fanned out on the white tile next to the broken pieces of the mug. It was the strangest thing. There was no fear. All the worry, the grief for David, the constant low-grade anger I felt at the world, it was gone. I just felt a quiet curiosity, like I was watching a scene in a movie. I saw the paramedics arrive. My neighbor, a sweet woman named Patty, must have heard the crash and called 911. They were working on me, putting paddles on my chest. I heard one of them shout, "No pulse, we're losing her." But I wasn't lost. For the first time in years, I felt found. The kitchen began to fade. The colors washed out until everything looked like an old, faded photograph. The sounds of the paramedics grew distant, replaced by a deep, humming silence. I wasn't in my house anymore. I was in a place of quiet, gray mist. It wasn't cold or scary. It was just in between, a gentle waiting room. I stood there for what felt like a long time, just breathing in the quiet. I remembered a silly thing, the taste of the strawberry jam my grandmother used to make when I was a little girl. It was so real, so vivid. I could almost feel the sunshine from her garden on my face. Then the mist ahead of me began to thin. It didn't burn away, it just parted, like a curtain being drawn back. And that's when I saw him. It's so hard to explain. He wasn't made of light, exactly. It was more like the light was coming from him, and the air around him bent to hold it. It was a light that had weight and substance, a light that hummed with a sound that was older than time. There was a field of green grass behind him, more real and more vibrant than any color on earth. I knew. Instantly, it was Jesus. But it wasn't the Jesus from the paintings in our church. His face wasn't fixed in a gentle, placid smile. His eyes were the universe. They weren't judging me. They weren't even just looking at me. They were looking through me. It felt like every single moment of my life, every whispered secret, every hidden shame, every forgotten joy, every angry thought I ever had was being held in his gaze. Not to be condemned, but just to be known. The feeling that washed over me was not just peace. It was a complete dismantling of every wall I had ever built. The tough exterior I'd learned to wear as a political wife, the bitterness that had crept in after David's death, the pride we both felt in our work, all of it just fell away like dust. I felt naked, but not ashamed. I felt seen, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly safe. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there. Tears, I didn't know, I had began to stream down my face. He didn't speak with his mouth. The words just formed inside my heart, clear as a bell. The sound was like warmth spreading through my chest. "Helen," the feeling said, "welcome. It's good to have you home for a little while." I looked at him, and all I could get out was a whisper. Is it my time? A feeling of gentle amusement flowed from him. "Your story is not finished, but I have something to show you, something you and David needed to see." And then the scene changed. We weren't in the field anymore. We were standing on a high place, looking down at the world. But it wasn't the world of maps and continents. It was a world of swirling colors, dark and light. I could see millions of people below, all shouting. They were gathered in armies, but their uniforms were news channels, political parties, and social media logos. They were throwing words at each other like rocks. Anger and fear rose up from them like thick black smoke, and in the smoke I could see things. Dark, shadowy figures that flitted between the angry people, whispering in their ears, poking at their resentments, feeding on their outrage. They were demons. They were the real enemy, and the people shouting on the ground couldn't see them at all. They thought the enemy was the person on the other side of the political aisle. Jesus stood beside me, his presence a shield against the darkness below. "Look," his voice echoed in my soul. "You and David spent your lives on that battlefield. You fought with courage. You fought for what you believed was right." As he said that, another man appeared, standing on the other side of Jesus. I recognized him instantly. It was Charlie Kirk. He looked young, just like I saw him on TV, full of fire and passion. He was looking down at the battlefield with a determined, focused frown. He looked so sure of himself, so ready for the fight. He didn't seem to see me or Jesus. He was just there. A symbol, an image of the fight we were all in. Jesus gestured toward him, and then to the whole chaotic scene below. "This is what you see," he said, "the battle for headlines, the war for votes, the fight for control." He paused, and the feeling that came from him was one of profound sadness. "But you are all fighting with the wrong weapons, and you are aiming at the wrong enemy." This was the shocking part. This was the moment everything tilted. I had spent my entire adult life believing our weapons were truth, facts, and a loud microphone. Then Jesus showed me something else. The vision of the shouting armies faded, and he showed me a small, dimly lit room. An elderly woman was on her knees by her bed. Her head was bowed, her hands clasped together. She wasn't praying loudly. She wasn't making a show of it. Her lips were barely moving. She was praying for her grandson, who was lost in drugs. She was praying for her neighbor, who had been cruel to her. She was praying for the leaders of the country, not with anger, but with a plea for wisdom and mercy. And as she prayed, I saw it. From her quiet, humble words, beams of pure, white light shot out into the spiritual realm. I saw one of those beams travel across the country and wrap around her grandson like a shield, causing a demon that was whispering in his ear to recoil in pain. I saw another beam of light fall upon her angry neighbor, and it didn't change him instantly, but it planted a tiny seed of softness in his hardened heart. I saw the prayers for the nation rise up like a sweet-smelling incense, pushing back the choking, dark smoke of anger and division, even if only for a moment. I gasped. It was real. It was more real than the television studios and the sold-out arenas. "This," Jesus' voice filled me, "is the real weapon. This is the real battle. You fought the shadows on the wall, but the source of the darkness was never your opponent. It was him." He didn't have to say who. I understood. The enemy isn't a political party. It's a spiritual force that feeds on our hatred for one another. He then showed me a man in his garage, a father who had been fired from his job. He was filled with bitterness. He was typing an angry social media post, his knuckles white. I could see a shadowy creature perched on his shoulder, whispering poison into his ear, feeding his rage. Then the vision shifted. I saw another man, a stranger, see the angry post online. Instead of arguing, this stranger paused. I saw a flicker of light as he said a quiet prayer for the angry man. He then typed a simple reply. Not an argument, not a statistic, just 4 words. I'm sorry, praying for you. I watched in amazement as that simple act of kindness, powered by a tiny prayer, became like a bucket of clean water thrown on the demon. It shrieked and pulled back. The angry father in his garage stopped typing. He stared at the screen. A single tear rolled down his cheek. The chain of hate had been broken, just for a second, by one small act of unexpected love. I looked at the image of Charlie Kirk standing there, a symbol of the loud public fight. I looked at the shouting armies, then I looked at the quiet woman on her knees and the kind man in his office. Tears filled my eyes. We had it all wrong, I stammered. We were so busy fighting each other. We were feeding the very thing we thought we were fighting against. The image of Charlie Kirk faded. It was just me and Jesus now. You had good hearts, he said, and the love in his voice was overwhelming. You loved your country, but you tried to win a spiritual war with earthly tools. The enemy loves nothing more than to see my children divided, angry, and afraid. He convinces you that the person who votes differently is your mortal enemy, because then you will never join together to fight the real enemy. He showed me my David, not the lion on the stage, but his spirit, at peace, resting. He was learning this same lesson. A wave of love and relief washed over me. He was okay. I want to stay here, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Please, I'm so tired of the fighting. I just want to stay here with you. The feeling of love deepened. I know. His voice was so tender it broke my heart. But your fight isn't over. It's just beginning. You must go back and tell them. Tell them what? I sobbed. They won't listen to me. I'm nobody without David. You are my child, he corrected gently, and that is everything. Go and tell them we're the real battle island. Tell them the most powerful weapon is not a microphone, but a bended knee. Tell them the greatest victory is not winning an election, but forgiving an enemy. Your voice is needed, not to shout anymore, but to whisper the truth of what you have seen. I didn't want to go. Leaving his presence felt like being torn in two. It was a physical pain, a grief more profound than anything I had ever felt on earth. I begged him to let me stay, but he just smiled, a smile that held all the love in creation. It is not goodbye, Helen. I am with you. Now, go, and do not be afraid. The last thing I felt was his overwhelming love. Then a gasp. A violent, racking gasp for air. My chest felt like it was on fire. Bright, sterile lights burned my eyes. There were voices shouting my name. We've got her. We've got a rhythm. I was back. I was in the hospital. Tubes were in my nose. Wires were attached to my chest. I felt heavy. So unbelievably heavy. It was like I had been forced back into a tight, heavy suit of armor after floating in the ocean. A doctor leaned over me, his eyes wide. Mrs. Caldwell? Can you hear me? Can you tell me your name? I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. I managed a whisper, Helen. The doctor looked at a nurse and just shook his head in disbelief. Her heart stopped for 23 minutes. I heard him say to someone, with a stroke that size, there should be massive brain damage. This is impossible. I started to weep, not from pain or fear. I wept because I had just left heaven. I wept for all the wasted years we had spent fighting the wrong war. In the days that followed, the doctors called my recovery a miracle. They couldn't explain it, but I could. I know why I was sent back. It wasn't to pick up the old political signs and get back on the battlefield I knew. It was to tell you, all of you, what I saw. The anger and the division you feel when you watch the news, the hate you feel for the people on the other side, that is not your weapon. That is the enemy's weapon, and he is using it against you. He has convinced us that the fight is Republican versus Democrat, left versus right, but it isn't. The real fight is good versus evil. It's light versus darkness, and that battle is not won on television or at the ballot box. It's won in the quiet moments. It's won when you choose to pray for someone you disagree with instead of curse them. It's won when you offer a kind word to someone who expects an argument. It's won when you forgive. Every time you choose love over hate, you are pushing back the darkness in a way that no political victory ever could. You are fighting the real war with the real weapons. Heaven is real, Jesus is alive, and he is begging us to stop fighting each other and to start fighting for each other through prayer, humility, and love. The battle for this world will be won with whispers, not with screams.